There is something deeply misleading about modern bread. It looks like food. It smells like food. It tastes familiar. But inside the body, it behaves like sugar. For most of human history, bread was not a source of inflammation. It was not something people feared. It did not cause bloating, brain fog, or sudden hunger an hour later. Bread was nourishment. Medieval peasants ate bread every day. Often more than half of their calories came from it. And yet, there was no epidemic of digestive disease, no widespread gluten intolerance, no metabolic collapse tied to bread consumption. The difference was not wheat. The difference was fermentation. Traditional bread was slow. Dough was mixed with flour and water, then left alone for many hours, sometimes for an entire day. Wild yeast and bacteria transformed it before it was ever baked. Modern bread skips this step almost entirely. Commercial yeast is added to refined flour. The dough rises quickly. It is baked within hours. What reaches your plate looks finished, but biologically, it is unfinished. Fermentation was not a flavor choice. It was a digestive process. Sourdough bread was partially digested before it ever entered the human gut. Sugars were broken down. Anti-nutrients were reduced. Proteins were softened. Minerals became absorbable. Modern yeast bread does none of this. So the work is passed to your body. And your body struggles. What was once food that supported the gut has become a product that overwhelms it. Blood sugar rises rapidly. Insulin spikes. Hunger returns quickly. Modern bread is not evil. It is incomplete. And the reason sourdough once functioned as a superfood is because fermentation finished the job that modern bread leaves undone. Fermentation is not decoration. It is transformation. When flour and water are mixed and left alone, something quiet but powerful begins to happen. Wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria wake up. These organisms were once present everywhere, in the air, on grain, on hands and tools. This microbial community is what defines sourdough. Yeast alone makes dough rise. Bacteria make bread digestible. During long fermentation, bacteria consume sugars in the dough. This lowers the glycemic impact of the final bread. It also produces organic acids that slow digestion further once the bread is eaten. At the same time, enzymes are activated. These enzymes begin breaking down complex starches into simpler forms. They soften gluten proteins. They reduce compounds like phytic acid, which binds to minerals and blocks absorption. This matters. Without fermentation, minerals like iron, zinc, and magnesium pass through the body unused. With fermentation, they become available. The dough is not just rising, it is being pre-digested. By the time sourdough enters the oven, much of the work your gut would normally have to do is already finished. The bread arrives calm, stable, recognizable. Modern yeast bread skips this entire process. Commercial yeast is designed for speed. It produces gas quickly, but it does not meaningfully break down sugars, proteins, or anti-nutrients. The dough looks ready long before it actually is. What reaches your stomach is raw from a biological perspective. Your digestive system is forced to handle what fermentation once did. And it struggles. This is why sourdough feels different in the body. Not lighter, not trendier, more complete. Modern bread does not fail because it contains carbohydrates. It fails because those carbohydrates arrive unfinished. When refined flour is mixed with commercial yeast and baked quickly, most of the starch remains intact. The sugars are not consumed by bacteria. The proteins are not softened. Nothing slows absorption. Once eaten, this bread breaks down rapidly into glucose. Blood sugar rises fast. Insulin follows immediately. The effect is similar to eating candy. This is why modern bread often produces a brief burst of energy followed by a crash. Hunger returns quickly. Cravings intensify. The body asks for more food not because it needs calories, but because blood sugar has fallen sharply. Fermentation changes this outcome completely. In sourdough, bacteria consume a portion of the sugars before you ever eat the bread. The organic acids they produce slow digestion in the gut. Glucose enters the bloodstream gradually. Insulin stays lower. Energy stays steady. Hunger stays quiet. Modern yeast bread has a glycemic index comparable to table sugar. Sourdough bread, made traditionally, has a significantly lower glycemic response, even when made from the same grain. The difference is not the wheat. It is the process. Skipping fermentation turns bread into a rapid delivery system for sugar. The body responds exactly as it should. It raises insulin, stores energy, and then demands more food once blood sugar drops. This is why bread became something people fear. Not because bread is inherently harmful, but because fermentation was removed. The gut was never meant to do all the work alone. For most of human history, food arrived partially prepared by time, microbes, and patience. Fermentation was part of digestion, just not inside the body. Sourdough respected this. During long fermentation, bacteria break down compounds that irritate the gut. Gluten proteins are softened. Enzyme inhibitors are reduced. Phytic acid, which binds minerals and stresses digestion, is neutralized. This changes how the gut responds. Food arrives calmer. Digestion slows naturally. The intestinal lining is less irritated. Modern yeast bread does the opposite. It delivers dense starch and intact proteins directly to the gut. Nothing has been softened. Nothing has been neutralized. The digestive system is forced to react quickly and aggressively. For many people, this feels like bloating, gas, discomfort, or brain fog. Not because their gut is weak, but because the food arrived unfinished. Fermented bread also feeds beneficial gut bacteria. The organic acids produced during sourdough fermentation support a healthier microbial balance. They lower intestinal pH slightly, discouraging harmful bacteria while supporting beneficial strains. Modern bread offers no such support. It passes quickly. It spikes sugar. It feeds instability. This is why people who struggle with bread often tolerate sourdough better. The fermentation does not remove food. It removes friction. The gut recognizes sourdough as food. Modern bread feels like work. Bread did not sustain civilizations because it filled stomachs. It sustained them because it delivered nutrition. Traditional sourdough fermentation unlocked minerals that would otherwise remain inaccessible. Grains naturally contain phytic acid, a compound that binds tightly to minerals like iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium. Without fermentation, these minerals pass through the body unused. Fermentation changes this. The acidic environment created by lactic acid bacteria activates enzymes that break down phytic acid. Minerals are released. Absorption improves. This is why medieval bread could serve as a nutritional foundation rather than a filler. People eating sourdough-based diets were not deficient despite relying heavily on grain. Their bread delivered usable minerals, not just calories. Modern yeast bread does not. Refined flour has already had most minerals removed. What remains is often bound by anti-nutrients. Fermentation is too short to release them. The bread fills the stomach, but the body remains undernourished. Hunger returns not because energy is low, but because nutrition is incomplete. This creates a dangerous illusion. People eat more bread, feel less satisfied, and assume the problem is quantity. In reality, the problem is that fermentation was removed from the process that once made bread whole. Sourdough was not just slower, it was complete. Fermentation did not disappear because it was ineffective. It disappeared because it was slow. As baking became industrialized, time became the enemy. Bread needed to be produced quickly, predictably, and in massive quantities. Long fermentation did not fit that model. Commercial yeast solved this problem. It made dough rise in hours instead of days. It produced uniform loaves. It allowed factories to scale bread production without waiting on microbes they could not fully control. What was lost was invisible. Fermentation does not announce itself on a label. It does not add volume. It does not improve shelf life. In fact, it does the opposite. Properly fermented bread spoils faster because it is alive. From an industrial perspective, fermentation looked like inefficiency. So it was removed. Refining flour helped complete the transition. Removing the bran and germ extended shelf life and improved texture. But it also removed fiber, oils, and minerals. The bread became lighter, softer, and biologically emptier. To compensate, sugar was added. Dough conditioners were added. Enzymes and emulsifiers were added. Bread became a manufactured product rather than a fermented food. The result was speed, and the cost was digestion. Modern bread was never designed to nourish. It was designed to rise fast, last long, and sell cheaply. Fermentation stood in the way, so it was sacrificed. Sourdough bread was never a superfood because it was ancient. It was a superfood because it was finished. Fermentation completed the work that grain alone could not do. It lowered sugar impact. It softened proteins. It unlocked minerals. It supported the gut before the gut had to work. Bread arrived calm. Modern bread does not. It arrives rushed, unfinished, biologically raw. So the body reacts. Blood sugar spikes. Insulin surges. Hunger returns quickly. Digestion struggles. And bread is blamed. But bread did not change because wheat became dangerous. Bread changed because fermentation was removed. What replaced it was speed. The industrial loaf is not food crafted for digestion. It is a product optimized for volume, shelf life, and profit. It looks complete, but inside the body, it behaves like sugar. Sourdough did not prevent disease because it was magical. It prevented disease because it respected time. Time allowed microbes to work. Time allowed food to transform. Time allowed digestion to begin before eating ever started. When fermentation disappeared, bread stopped being nourishment and became a delivery system. And when people reacted, they were told their bodies were the problem. They were not. The process was. Sourdough bread fed civilizations because it aligned with human biology. Modern bread overwhelms it because it ignores it. The lesson is not to fear bread. The lesson is to recognize which bread is finished. Because food that is finished nourishes. And food that is rushed behaves like sugar.